Hello again everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are taking a look at one of Fenix Simulation's newest additions to the Microsoft Flight Simulator Airbus family, the A321. I'm sure at this point most of you are well aware, but Fenix very recently released both the A321 and as well the A319 for MSFS. Both aircraft come included in the same package, and as with the Fenix Airbus A320, both aircraft are absolutely superb. Today's video isn't intended to be a full review per se. Of course, much of what I'll be demonstrating here has already been covered in my full review of the Fenix Airbus A320. However, I wanted to showcase the add-on, and at any rate, it's been quite some time since we last flew a Fenix Airbus here on the channel. For our flight today then, we are going to be operating a First Choice Airways charter service. We're currently on the ground at East Midlands Airport, and we're going to be jetting off to the Mediterranean island of Ibiza for some sunshine, some beautiful beaches, and some raucous nightlife. One point to note before we get started: I mentioned during my previous video that I've been having some trouble with the alignment of my mouse cursor during recordings recently. I've yet to figure out a fix for the issue, and as I think the erroneous cursor depiction is rather distracting, I've elected not to record the mouse cursor in today's video. I'm using DSR for my 4K recordings, but this only seems to be an issue with MSFS, and even then only more recently. If anybody has any idea what the root cause of the problem might be, please do let me know down in the comment section below. As always, I really hope you enjoy the video. If you do, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. If you'd like to help support the channel further, you can do so by becoming a channel member or patron. So, good afternoon and welcome back to the flight deck of another Fenix Simulations Airbus aircraft. I have to say, it is really nice now having almost the entirety of the 320 family available to us with the Microsoft Flight Simulator, and of course the jet completed to the very high standards that we've come to expect from Fenix Simulations. I'm very much looking forward to getting stuck into the 321. I thought we'd carry out a full flight with the aircraft, although of course much of what I'll be demonstrating here today will be very similar to the A320. In terms of the setup, we'll just run through the pertinent items. So with the overhead panel, the crew oxygen supply can go on. We'll take the CVR ground control on there as well. And for the ADIRs, we'll set those through to nav. Lighting looks good. We'll take the seatbelt signs on. Emergency exit lights can go through to armed. As you can see, we've already got the APU up and running, the APU bleed on there as well. For the cockpit and cabin temperature selectors, we'll just take those through to the 10 o'clock position. Fuel pumps are selected on. We've already carried out an APU fire test. We'll carry out an engine fire test here as well. So engine 1 looks good. And we'll do the same for engine 2.
Midlands 8865 London, good afternoon. Climb flight level 330.
And again, the test is good. For the right hand side of the overhead, we'll just bring the aft cargo heat here through to the 12 o'clock position. And for the RMP and ACP, we'll leave those selections as they are. For the forward main instrument panel, we've got a QNH there on the standby of 1006, set there as well on the primary altimeters. Standby attitude indicator looks good, gear handle is down, the clock and the date have been checked. We've got the anti-skid noticeable steering switch selected on. We'll set up the MCDU in just a moment's time, and no need to make any changes today for our flight to either the radios or the audio control panel. For the weather radar, that's currently selected off, same as well for the predictive wind shear. In terms of the ECAM, hydraulic quantities look good, same there as well for the engine oil quantities. And lastly, the crew oxygen supply there as well is checked. Thrust levers are in the idle position. Engine masters are off. Engine start selector in the normal position. Parking brake is set. The flaps are up. Again, no need to make any changes there to the FO's radios. And for the transponder, currently in standby. On system 1, altitude reporting selected on. For TCAS there we've got above and standby. A little bit out of sequence here, but for the EFA selections, flight directors are selected on. We've got VORs there on both sides, same as well for constraints. And as well, we've got ARC 20 selected there on both sides. On the FCU, initial climb altitude is going to be flight level 90, so we'll just set that here ahead of time. We've got 90 there on the FCU and 9000 there on the PFD. In terms of our takeoff performance, we've already calculated our data there. So we've got East Midlands, runway 27, dry conditions as you can see. For the flap config, we've gone for optimum and node force toga there. Anti-ice is off, packs will be on, takeoff weight will be 74.5 tons, and we've got a MAC tau of 23.7. Current wind is 270 at 11 knots, temperature of 16 degrees, QNH is 1006. So in terms of the takeoff data itself, runway 27, V1 150, VR 153, V2 154, flaps 2 departure, up 1.3 on the THS. We'll brief the departure in just a moment's time, but we've got a transition altitude of 6,000 feet, flex temp of 46 degrees, and for the thrust reduction and acceleration there, 1790 feet. So in terms of the departure then, it is going to be the Daventry 3 November departure today, out of East Midlands. That's plate 10-3, it's a conventional SID. Transition altitude, as we just mentioned, 6,000 feet, aerodrome elevation is 306 feet. In terms of the actual departure, we're climbing straight ahead to 1 mile off India Echo Mike Echo ILS. We'll then be making a left turn onto a track of 223. 6.5 miles from the ILS, another left turn, this time tracking inbound towards Daventry on the 338 radial. We need to be above 3,000 feet, 7 miles out from East Midlands, above 5,500 feet, 31 miles from Daventry, and maintaining flight level 90, 23 miles from Daventry. In terms of the notes, we've got a warning, do not climb above flight level 90 until cleared by ATC, that's fairly self-explanatory. No turns below 810 feet, so with the aerodrome elevation there, no turns below 500 feet above the ground. And we're looking at an average distance there of about 45 miles towards the station. No significant high terrain for us around East Midlands, the highest sector MSA out to the west of the field, or northwest, 2,700 feet. Weather, as you've seen, is absolutely fine. And lastly for the taxi, pretty straightforward for us here. Today we're currently on the central apron. We're going to be exiting via Romeo onto Alpha, and then it'll be a full-length departure off runway 27 via Alpha 1. So lastly, we're just coming down to the MCDU, and we'll get that set up here for the flight. So we'll select FMGC. And today, of course, we are an A321-200 CFM 56 engines. Nav database is valid. We'll just clear the messages. Onto the init page, departing out of East Midlands, Echo Golf November X-ray. And we are bound for Ibiza, so Lima Echo India Bravo. Alternate today is Palma de Mallorca, Lima Echo Papa Alpha. Flight number is first choice, so Foxtrot Charlie Alpha 321. And the cost index today, fairly low, 12 there on the cost index. Initial cruise flight level is 350. We'll leave the temp and the throttle pause there at their default values. In terms of the flight plan, we're going to be building that up manually. That is going to take a little bit of time. We've got quite a few direct 2s here today. So off runway 27, again, it's the Daventry 3 November SID. We can insert that. And of course, takes us out towards the Daventry VOR. From there, we'll be joining onto the Mike 605 airway. That takes us out towards waypoint Silver. From there, it'll be the Quebec 41 airway. That takes us out towards waypoint Cowley, Charlie, Oscar, Whiskey, Lima, Yankee. And we can insert all of that. From Cowley, it's going to be direct to Golf Whiskey Charlie. And then joining again onto the Upper November 859 airway. And that takes us towards waypoint Soaphill, Sierra Oscar, Papa, India Lima. And again, we can insert that. From Soaphill, it's going to be direct to waypoint Balan, Bravo Alpha Lima Alpha November. And that's going to be the 47 North 001 East. We'll then be direct to waypoint FPOC, Echo Victor Papa Oscar Kilo. Then direct to waypoint Narak, November Alpha Romeo Alpha Kilo. Then direct to Golf Alpha India. And that's going to be 44 North 002 East. Then direct to waypoint Lomra, Lima Oscar Mike Romeo Alpha. And then direct to waypoint Rokan, Romeo Oscar Charlie Alpha November. Next direct to waypoint Pumal, Papa Uniform Mike Alpha Lima. And then I've got a little bit of a mismatch here between the aircraft and my Simbury flight plan, but we can still build things up manually, so we should be taking the November 859 airway, but that doesn't seem to be correct here in the box. Instead, direct to Bravo Charlie November. And in this particular case, that's going to be 41 north, 002 east. And then lastly, direct to waypoint Corda, Charlie Oscar Romeo Delta Alpha. And again, we can insert all of that. From waypoint Corda, we're going to be flying the Corda 4 November arrival, expecting the ILS for runway 24. We'll take the Zulu. There's the Corda 4 November. And we can insert all of that. So just very briefly here, running through the flight plan, making sure everything looks to be correct. And as I always point out, obviously in real life would be far more diligent, but just saving a little bit of time here in the video. So you can see that does take us out towards Corda for the Corda 4 November. And ultimately onto the ILS runway 24. For the secondary, we'll just make that a copy of the active. RadNav page looks good. In terms of the init then, for the zero fuel weight today, currently that's estimated at 63.2 tons. And the zero fuel weight CFG is 22.4. Block fuel for the flight today is 11.6 tons. We've got about an extra 30 minutes of fat there in the flight plan. Always good to do with a new aircraft, I find. And that's currently giving us a takeoff weight of 74.6. I've got 74.5 here planned at the moment. That's what we planned as well on the tablet. So we're about 100 kilos up. We can refine those figures once we finish the boarding. We've got nav accuracy upgrade. We can clear the message. And GPS primary. Coming onto the performance page then, we have a V1, again as we calculated off the tablet, of 150. A VR of 153. And a V2 of 154. Again, it's going to be config 2 and up 1.3 on the THS. A flex of 46 degrees. And again, we have a transition altitude of 6,000, thrust reduction and acceleration altitude of 1780. Lastly, for the progress page, we'll just put in Echo Golf November X-ray East Midlands runway 27. And that is it in terms of the initial setup. Again, at the moment, we're currently boarding the jet. Obviously, the cabin of the 321 slightly different here from the 320. I gather as well, Fenix have now updated the aircraft to include multiple different cabin configurations. So we'll just take a quick run through that, take a look at the cabin before we come back here ahead of time for the push and start.
It's important that you do not inflate the life jacket inside the aeroplane, as this will hinder your exit. There is a safety briefing card located in the seat pocket in front or beside you. This illustrates the emergency procedures, including the brace position, which must be adopted should the command heads down be given. Please take time to read this before takeoff. We ask those of you seated next to an exit to study the exit operation on the safety briefing card. Before we make a final check of the cabin, please make sure your seatbelt is securely fastened. Your seat back and tray table are returned to their stowage, window blinds open, foot or leg rest stowed, and your armrest down ready for takeoff. After takeoff, the captain will be giving you more information about our flight routing. We want you to enjoy every minute of the flight, so please let us know if we can help in any way. Thank you.
So once again, very nice visual work there from Fenix down the back. As you can see, we now have all of the doors closed up. Everybody's on board the jet. We'll get the cockpit door closed up here as well. A little bit unusual here today. We're going to be starting on the stand, no need for a pushback. We're going to be just taxiing straight ahead onto the main apron. We've been cleared for the start, so the beacon can go on. Transponder will set through to auto. And for the before start checklist, the cockpit preparation has been completed. Gear pins and covers have been removed. Signs are on and auto, as are set through to nav. In terms of the fuel quantity, we have 11.5 tons on board the jet. As you can see, that is balanced. The flight plan calls for 11.6. We've just burned down a little bit there on the APU, but again, an extra 30 minutes on board the aircraft, so that 100 kilos isn't going to hurt us here today. In terms of the takeoff data, that is set. We have V1 150, VR 153, V2 154, and a flex of 46 degrees. Power ref, we have a QNH of 1006, set there 3 times. And below the line, windows and doors
Easy 6441 London, good afternoon, route direct to Saitek.
are closed, beacon is on, thrust levers are idle, and the park brake will leave on. That is the before start checklist complete. So again, we are cleared for the start. The start selector can go through to ignition start. And we'll start engine 2. Okay, so we have a good start there on the number 2. We'll start the number 1. As you can see, the EGT there is a little bit high here for the start, but that's just as a result of having played around with a few things here for the recording. So engine 1 to start. We'll just keep a good eye here on the EGT as the engine runs up. We have N2 rotation. I'll try and keep fairly quiet here during the start. There's our fuel flow. And the EGT now coming up, so it looks like we do have a good light off. Just keep a good eye there on our temperature limits. Oil pressure coming up there as well. As always, really nice sounds here from Fenix. And just waiting on the engine to stabilise. We have an available indication there on the number 1, so 2 good starts. Start selector can go back through to normal. We'll start the chrono. APU can come off. And down on the pedestal, we'll reset the rudder trim, arm up the spoilers. Again, it's going to be a config 2 departure. On the THS, we're looking for up 1.3 units.
Heading flight level 350, jet set 304, trying, thank you.
On the doors page, all of our slides are armed. No status messages for us. So for the after start checks, the anti-ice is selected off. Again, the OAT currently 17 degrees Celsius. ECAM status is checked, pitch trim. We have up 1.3 units, rudder trim is 0. That is the after start checklist complete. Once again, in terms of the taxi, just making our way straight ahead here onto the apron. Coming out of the apron left here via Romeo, right onto Alpha, and then taking Alpha all the way down to holding point Alpha 1 for runway 27. Now clear for the taxi, so the runway 10 flights can go on. Nose light can go through to taxi. Take the park brake off.
Monarch 5901, contact London 127.87. Bye-bye.
Doesn't look like the jet wants to move here at idle thrust. We are fairly heavy.
27.87, Monarch 591, goodbye.
So just coming up on the thrust levers. And we're up there at around 35% on the M1s. So fairly plausible behaviour overall. All clear out on the right.
Good day, it's 6239, returning to Ibiza.
We can come back off the thrust levers now. Again, joining here onto the taxiway, left out via Romeo.
Roger, like Sandy, Compton and Dublin, Skyshare 6239.
Maintaining around 10 knots here in the turn. And again, turning right, taxiway Alpha, down to holding point Alpha 1, runway 27.
Hello cargo 410, route direct to Dover.
Direct over now for Polar 410.
Jet set 304 Charlie, turn left heading 170 degrees, and B flight level 350, level at being sit at please. Over left heading 170 degrees, and we will be level 350, minus jet set 304. Channel 346, contact west, channel 132.830, right.
Okay, so we're now lined up here on runway 27. For the last of our before takeoff items, the cabin crew have been advised engine start selector is normal and the packs are on. That is the before takeoff checklist complete. It's been quite some time since the last flown aircraft with CFM engines, so we'll go with 50% here on the M1s to allow the engines to stabilise. I don't recall whether or not it was 40% or 50%. And take off. So we have Manflex 46, SRS runway, auto thrust blue. Thrust is set. Really nice and easy to find those detents on the Fenix, which is great. There's 100 knots. Excellent sounds once again as well. And V1, rotate. Gently back on the stick. Obviously a tail strike is more of a concern here in the 321. There's nav, we do have a positive climb. Bring up the gear. So pitching for the flight directors, around 15 degrees there, which looks much more reasonable than my last outing in the Fenix Airbus A320. 15 degrees is certainly pretty much on target for a lot of the Airbus family.
London, good afternoon, Swiss 354, flight level 340.
Okay, let's leave a climb. And we have thrust climb, auto thrust out blue.
Twist 354 London, roger.
And we are now up through our thrust reduction and acceleration altitude. Just wait until we see an acceleration there before we come through to flaps 1.
AB 88, correction, Midland 8865, redirect to AUTAC.
And as always, the Fenix, just an absolute joy to hand fly. It really does feel quite representative of the real world Airbus overall.
Good day, London United 915, flight level 280 for flight level 300.
United 915 London, roger.
A little bit of an S-turn there on the departure. Okay, speed check, we'll go flaps 1.
London Control, very good afternoon to EGNX 231. We're maintaining flight level 350 towards Kidley.
EGNX 231 London, good afternoon, redirect to Saitek.
And that flight director guidance, a little bit overly sensitive there probably. Though again, I don't know whether or not that S-turn is accurately coded. Anyway, nicely on the flight directors, we'll take autopilot 1. Just waiting now till we come up through S-speed. As you can see, the 321 not exactly sporty in terms of its performance.
Ryanair 5706, contact Maastricht, channel 132.205, bye-bye.
So just coming up through 200 knots, above S-speed now. Still accelerating, we'll go flaps 0. And accelerating out towards 250 knots. With the flaps retracted, we'll take the runway turn-off lights off, same as well for the nose lights. And we can disarm the spoilers. So turning now southbound, man towards Daventry. As always, the sim looking absolutely epic. Very beautiful morning here out of East Midlands. Does have to be said though, I can really notice that my PC is chugging along here with the Fenix Airbus A321. Fenix family has always been pretty FPS intensive, as again I'm sure many of you are aware, and the 321 certainly no exception. Even with frame gen enabled here, definitely struggling a little bit for FPS. And that is really one of the only weaknesses of the product overall. Get up through 5,000, the weather looks good. We'll cycle the signs. Set the cam crew to work. And up now through 6,000 feet, so we'll go standard.
132205, Ryanair 5706, bye.
And 1013 here on the standby. And we have standard set and cross-checked. So for the after takeoff, we have landing gear up, flaps are retracted, the packs are on, altimeters are set, that is the after takeoff checklist complete. And approaching now flight level 90. We've got speed out star. Holding that until we're through Delta 339 Whiskey. About 10 miles to run on that. And as you'd expect as well, the aircraft doing a bang-up job here of following the profile. Again, just that turn after the departure, I think that's slightly strange in terms of its coding. Going off the chart there, you can see it is supposed to just be a direct left turn onto a track of 223.
United 915, climb flight level 360.
Anyway, we'll assume ATC has been very generous to us today, so we've got further climb now. Climb now up to flight level 150. And just to counter the restriction there, we've got open climb, so thrust climb, open climb. Out blue, flight level 150. Approaching 10,000 feet, we'll get the landing lights off just a touch early.
Climb flight level 340, United 915.
And of course, as we come up through 10,000, expecting to see the aircraft accelerate here as well. We'll hold the passengers a little bit longer. Looks fairly benign up above, but we'll just hold the seatbelts here till we get up through that cloud layer. And currently the outside air temperature is 0 degrees, 11 degrees on the TAT, so we'll take the engine anti-ice most likely here as we come up through that cloud layer as well.
Good day, just at 743, flight level 360.
In terms of what's around us,
Ryanair 2836, make your Mach number decimal 80 or less.
we've got Birmingham and Coventry there, just out towards the west of us. And we've got Luton down towards the south, Heathrow, and then ultimately on towards Gatwick. As well there we've got Brize Norton and Benson off the nose.
Flight level 350, Ryanair 2340.
Unfortunately, as I mentioned during the introduction, can't really point too many features out here today with the mouse pointer issues, which is a bit of a shame. Hopefully though you can still get the gist of what's going on, and certainly as well with the clarity enabled as a result of 4K, you should at least be able to see these displays, and as well the charts here on the tablet a little bit more readily than in previous videos. So the jet now accelerating just shy of 300 knots, you can see they're targeting 296 here in the climb. In terms of the flight plan then, we've got another 886 miles to run towards Ibiza. Currently expecting an arrival time there of 0916. About another 2 hours here in the flight. Estimated fuel on board at arrival currently 5.3 tons. Continuing to track about 160 out towards Daventry. After the VOR, again heading down through Oxford, over London, and tracking out towards the UK coastline, crossing out over the water at Goodwood.
Boarding Quebec Whiskey, keep your speed up until 5 miles DME, please. Keep your speed until 5 miles, Wellington to Quebec Whiskey. 261 Delta, are you reducing? Yes, but it takes some time, it's not static. Roger, 61 Delta, for information, you are 4.5 miles behind a 320, he is 40 knots slower for now. That's perfect, 61 Delta. France 1059, reduce speed 180 knots, 1 decline. Air France 1735, 180, puis descendez 5000, 1016, autorisé ILS 27 droite. Donc 5016, 182, autorisé ILS 27 droite, Air France 1735. Candy 45 Alpha, descend level 60. Descend level 60, scan 45 Alpha. Planet 108, descend level 80. Descend level 80, planet 108. Vol arrivé à France 943, bonjour, on descend vers niveau 80, on souhaiterait 10 degrés droite. 943 reçu, ça ne sera pas jusqu'au bout, donc prenez l'air, appelez-moi après à revenir à gauche. Pas de design, c'est le bloc, scanner 45 Alpha. 45 Alpha, sorry, descend 5000 feet 1016, you're cleared, I'll approach 27 right. Okay, 5000 1016. 261 Delta, reduce speed 160 to relay to Tower on 11925, au revoir. Speed to Tower, 11925, bye bye. On revient sur la route, Air France 943. Planet 108 and left heading north. Left to the north, Planet 108.
So welcome back to the flight deck. We are now just approaching the island of Palma de Mallorca. And as you can see, just coming off waypoint quarter, about to hit our top descent point. If you recall from the briefing earlier on, quarter is the start of the arrival, inbound for the ILS runway 24. So we're going to descend straight down today to 3,000 feet. We'll set that up here on the FCU.
Thank you.
And to make life a little bit easier for ourselves, we might as well just start the descent a little bit early, 10 miles to run. And now we'll go for a managed descent. So we have descent out blue and currently flight level 30. We'll set the QNH once we go down through the transition level. As we descend here, we'll brief up the arrival, get the aircraft set up during the descent. Again, typically we would have done that during the cruise, but for the sake of the video, this works a little bit better in sequence. So once again, in terms of the arrival, it's going to be the Q4 November arrival, which is plate 10-2. It's an RNAV star. That has us tracking in from waypoint Corda, inbound towards the Alpha Delta X-ray VOR, maintaining above 5,000 feet initially, and then tracking in towards the island of Ibiza, ultimately towards waypoint Gizlu. Gizlu is the clearance limit for the arrival, but it does actually bring us later on onto the ILS, as you can see there, waypoint Gizlu, and then onto Batby, waypoint Ermit, and into Ibiza itself. So in a moment's time, we'll just clean up the flight plan. There is currently a discontinuity, but we'll get rid of that and have us tracking from waypoint Gizlu direct to waypoint Ermit. In terms of the ILS itself, the frequency is 109.5, final approach course is 241, aerodrome elevation 23 feet. Today we're going down to a Cat 1 MDA of 290 feet, and for the missed approach, it's climbing runway heading to 800 feet, then a left turn, not before 0.5 DME from India Bravo Alpha. Max 185 initially on the speed. We'll have a look in a moment, but I suspect we'll have to hold at least config 1 there for the missed approach. And ultimately we're climbing up to 3,000 foot today in the event of a go-around. Terrain wise, as you can see, nothing too significant there. We do have some hills out to the north of the field, up to around 1,400 feet. MSA here for the arrival, 2,800 feet. Otherwise, absolutely perfect day here. We've got a temperature of about 26 degrees, QNH is 1013, about 7 knots on the wind, more or less down the runway. So very pleasant conditions for our arrival into Ibiza. In terms of the landing itself, landing on 24, we'll use idle reverse, auto brake low, planning to vacate here off at Echo 7, and then there'll be a very short taxi here in towards the main apron. In terms of stands, probably just come in on one of the remote bays, so probably stand 17 or thereabouts. In terms of our fuel state, we're now showing landing with 5 tons. As we discussed earlier on, today we need 2.8 for Mallorca, which we're just coming overhead now. So we've got about an extra 2.2 tons now remaining, just shy of an hour's worth of extra fuel. Again, planning on that 20-minute contingency plus 30 minutes extra. So it looks as though the Fenix A321 has done an absolutely perfect job here on the fuel burn. And the fuel nicely balanced there, about 2.6 tons in each wing tank. In terms of our performance then, already calculated an arrival here for runway 24, dry conditions obviously, 7 knots, 210 on the wind, 26 degrees, 1013. Planned landing weight here was 68.5 tons. And again, planning on landing with 5 tons, our zero fuel weight was 63.2, so just a couple of 100 kilos extra here on the calculation, which is in our favour. No auto brake, no reverse, or we'll be using idle reverse in this case. Manual landing, flaps full with the auto thrust. So for runway 24, landing distance available is 2,800 metres, and our factored landing distance is 25.58. So we've got plenty of margin there, and again, planning to vacate off on the right. So as we discussed, we'll be using auto brake low for the landing. In terms of the setup, you can see there we have enter destination data. We'll clear the message, and we can do that now. So QNH again 1013. The temperature, as we said, is 26 degrees. And the wind currently 210 at 7 knots. In terms of the MDA, we'll just come back to the chart. So ILS Zulu, runway 24, it's plate 11-4. And the frequency there, 109.5241. MDA 290. And that's on the Barrow. They're just approaching the Alpha Delta X-ray VOR currently, still obviously well above 5,000 feet. It's coming down through flight level 280. In terms of the flight plan then, as we said, we've got waypoint Gislu, which is the clearance limit, and then we've got waypoint Ermit for the RLS. Just clear out the discontinuity, link both of those up. And we've got a mode reversion there as a result, so speed VS will come back into descent. That's giving us about 94 track miles to run.
We sir to 618, left turn to Ajena.
We need about 90 miles more or less, very rough calculation there, so we're looking pretty good currently in terms of our vertical profile. So flight plan's done, radnavs, the identifier there, India Bravo Zulu. That does concur with the chart, 109.5, 240 versus 241, and a 3-degree slope. In terms of our fuel prediction, showing about 3.6 tonnes extra. That is a little bit generous versus what we've got here on the paper documents. And for the progress page, we've just got Ibiza runway 24 now, showing about 64 miles direct to the field. So 64 miles would definitely have us a little bit high here. Coming through 25,000 feet, we need about 100 miles currently for the descent. Just to exacerbate that a little bit further, we'll give ourselves a little bit of a challenge today, although nothing too major. So we'll assume now that ATC has given us a direct 2. We'll assume there's no other traffic around the field, and we've now been cleared direct to India Bravo 730. Just bring up the RLS again.
Proceed is cleared, clearance level is 0, standard arrival, all to Bravo,
India Bravo 730. That's checked, and we can insert that. Obviously now as a result we're going to be well high here on the profile, currently showing about 7,000 feet high. And our initial port of call here will be to correct that with speed.
We sir to 618, call Barcelona 133.030, bye-bye.
So already the aircraft got a nice high descent rate, but we'll just keep cranking on the speed here. We'll maintain around 4,500 feet per minute in terms of rate of descent.
133.030 is here, 618, bye-bye.
Obviously as well, we do have the speed brakes available, but we'll use those once we've maxed out the speed. Just bearing in mind we do need to bring the speed back again, of course, coming through flight level 100.
Boarding 3 Victor Whiskey, descenso nivel de vuelo 130.
We've got thrust idle there on the FMA.
Descenso nivel 130, vueling 3 Victor Whiskey.
The transition level there in the box, flight level 60. And on the chart, by ATC, transition altitude is 6,000. We'll set the altimeter today at around flight level 100. So again, just keep increasing that speed. Showing about 50 miles now to the field. And we need at least 60 miles here to get the aircraft down. And you can see there the profile slowly coming back towards us.
Voy 10 Victor Whiskey, descenso nivel de vuelo 90.
They're just coming down through 20,000 feet. We'll get the seatbelt signs on once again. And you can see now the island of Ibiza. As we discussed, not all that much in terms of terrain. Once more we've got Mallorca out behind us to the east. So we'll go with 330 knots. In terms of our profile now, about 3,500 feet high. And we'll just hold the speed here until we come down through 10. At which point we'll come back towards 250. We'll probably have to take the speed brakes as well at that point. And slowing up here before we hit the RLS.
Voy 10 Victor Whiskey, descenso a 5.000 pies, 1014.
Descenso a 5.000 pies con 1014, vueling 10 Victor Whiskey.
Number 3777 Tango, 770, descending 130.
Number 3777 Tango, descending.
Okay, so we're just coming down now through 6,500 feet. We've got a 210 knot speed restriction. Just coming back through green dots. We'll take flaps 1. And as you can see, the approach phase there is activated. They're going back now towards S speed. Just maintaining VS minus 1,100 feet per minute at the moment. That's going to bring us quite nicely here in line with our descent point just after waypoint Ermit. In terms of the RLS, we have India Bravo Zulu identified. The localizer is correct sensing. We're not picking up the glide there just yet. And we'll take flaps 2 here as well.
Descenso nivel 80, vueling 3 Victor Whiskey.
Not sure whether or not the 320 is anything like the 330, but we may not be able to get down the glide slope here at flaps 1. So just coming in on the range, 5,000 feet, 80 miles to run, just a touch low now, so we'll start shallowing out that descent rate. And we'll let that speed roll off. We'll hold 180 knots for now. So selected speed, 180 knots. At the moment then, just waiting on the glide. I would expect we'd have the glide by now, so if we don't get that, we'll descend down to 2,000 feet. And then we'll just carry out essentially a localizer approach from 2,000 feet on a 3-degree slope. Looking to descend there at 6 miles from India Bravo Zulu. Again though, we should obviously be picking up the glide slope in this particular case. Call there from the cabin.
Secure for landing.
Okay, cabin's ready. And for the approach checklist, the briefing is confirmed, ECAM status is checked, seatbelt signs are on. The barrier F, we have a QNH of 1013, there's the glide slope. Just increase that vertical speed, we'll go with VS minus 900. Again, barrier F, we have QNH of 1013 on all 3 altimeters. We'll arm up the approach. In terms of the MDA, we have Barrow of 290, there's Loke, we have Glide Slope Blue, and Cat 3 Dual, Autopilot 1 and 2. And lastly, for the engine mode selector, that's set through to normal, that is the approach checklist complete. So looking good here on the localizer, just slightly below the glide. We'll again shallow out that descent to intercept the glide slope. Once we capture that, we should be able to maintain that very nicely in config 2. So for now, just holding 180 knots till about 7 DME. We'll take the gear down around 8 miles. This glide slope star. In terms of the missed approach altitude, again, we said we're going up to 3,000 feet here for the go-around. And we have 3,000 set, 3,000 foot there as well on the PFD. Yeah, that's coming through 12 miles. So overall, as you can see, just using the speed there, obviously we cut out a section of that approach, but just using the speed there, we were able to lose a lot of altitude. Glide slope. And then of course as well, being higher speed does also make the speed brakes more effective, so that really helped us get down and ultimately slow down as well, coming through 10,000. So we have glide slope low, 11 miles to run, 5.2 tons now on the fuel, and showing about 5.1 now for the arrival. A nice view here of the island of Ibiza as we come through about 10 DME. So again, no significant mountains. Mallorca has a little bit more going for it in terms of terrain. We do, though, have those hills that we talked about out towards the north of the field. And visual as well now with the runway. There's runway 24 straight off the nose. So just coming down through 3,000 feet, 9 miles, 9.5 miles there on the DME. Good little gross error check there, looking good in terms of the profile. Looks as though the glide slope is accurate. So again, just waiting for another mile or so. We'll take the gear down. So far though, probably goes without saying, but the Fenix A321 very much behaving as you'd expect an Airbus to behave. And I think Fenix fit that really nice niche. They're overall a very technical product. Okay, there's 8 miles, we'll take gear down. As I mentioned during my review of the 320, I haven't tried the FS Labs version, so I can't compare with that. I think from what I've heard, the FS Labs version is the more accurate representation of the aircraft overall. For example, some of the pitch and power settings on the Fenix aircraft are not perhaps quite accurate enough to fly, for example, with unreliable speed, or at least they weren't the last time I checked. As you've probably noticed from most of my reviews, those sorts of things don't tend to bother me personally. As long as the aircraft flies in a plausible fashion, has a reasonable flight model, that's all I'm really looking for. And as I mentioned before, I think that Fenix do a really nice job of actually recreating the feeling of flying an Airbus. So 160 knots now selected, we'll go flaps 3. We've got gear down, 3 greens, we've armed up the spoilers, and speed check, we'll go flaps full. We'll maintain 160 knots here till 5 miles. And there's 5 miles, we'll go manage speed. Just coming through the final fix at 4.5 miles. And they were looking for an altitude of 1,500 feet. We did just pass through 1,500. In terms of the landing checklist then, the cabin crew have been advised the cabin is ready, as we heard. Auto thrust, we have speed. Auto brake is low, eco memo, we have landing no blue. That is the landing checklist complete. So approaching 1,000 feet, everything nice and stable. 4 miles to run. And again, we'll be touching down with auto brake low, idle reverse, vacating off on the right. You can see the terminal area there, off to the right of the runway.
1,000.
That is checked. We are stable.
Vueling 3 Victor Whiskey, descenso 5.000 pies y llame final. Su indicativo 19105. Buenas tardes.
And just approaching 800 feet. We'll take out the autopilot. Always forgetting there I don't have any hardware assigned to the Fenix A320, which does make things a little bit more difficult. Okay, there's Cat 1.
Descenso 5.000 y 19105 solo indicativo. Vueling 3 Victor Whiskey, muy buenas tardes.
So the aircraft very stable there on the low and the glide slope. That's really nice to see, and a bit of a rarity in Microsoft Flight Simulator, it has to be said.
500.
Albeit the conditions are fairly benign. That's checked, 500.
Vueling 15 Alfa Charlie, descenso 6.000 pies, 1.013.
Descenso para 6.000 pies con 1.013, vueling 15 Alfa Charlie. 300. Minimum.
Continue.
200.
A little bit tricky there to make out the PAPI. I think we've got one red at the moment.
40, 30, 20, retard.
Okay, bring back the thrust levers.
10, 5.
And a little bit of a stutter there as we touch down. Rather unfortunate. Anyway, taking idle reverse. We have spoilers, rev green, and decel. And rather than jamming on the brakes here to vacate at the next exit, we'll take the second right. Just coming through 70 knots. And rolling through for Echo 8. Okay, so we just vacated the runway. We'll take the next left here into the apron, which looks to be Golf 1. Get the landing lights off. Strobes can go back through to auto. Nose light can go through to taxi. And a fairly short taxi here, so we'll get the APU fired up. We can retract the flaps. Disarm the spoilers. And the weather radar can come off here as well. And doing about 50 knots here down the taxiway currently. So for the after landing checks, the flaps are retracted, spoilers are disarmed, APU is starting, radar and predicted wind shear is off. That is the after landing check is complete. So next right, Golf 1, onto the brakes. Again, just bring that speed back to around 10 knots here for the turn.
Alarm 377 Tango, descent level 9 0.
And obviously not all that realistic here in the sim, but we'll just make our way into the terminal, find somewhere to park up. Looks like we've got somewhere straight off the nose, so we'll go for that. It's certainly a very beautiful and sunny day here in Ibiza. So it looks like stand 24 is available. That'll do us very nicely. We've got an Iberia Express 321 there, just off the nose. Onto the brakes. Park brake is set. APU is now available. We'll take the bleed on. We can cut the engines. Now we'll take the TCAS and the transponder there back through to standby. Seatbelt signs can go off. We should wait here for the slides to be disarmed. I don't know quite how we do that in the Phoenix, so we'll just take the beacon off. And we can take the fuel pumps off here as well. So in terms of the parking checks, APU bleed is on, engines are off, seatbelts are off, external lights are set, fuel pumps are off, park brake is on, and that is the shutdown checklist complete here on the ground in Ibiza. So there you go guys, I do hope you enjoyed our outing in the Fenix Airbus A321. Once again, Fenix have more or less knocked the ball out of the park with their newest additions to the sim, and to my mind certainly continue to cement their reputation as one of the best add-on developers within Microsoft Flight Simulator. Again, the package includes both the A319 and the A321, retailing at a very reasonable £40 or thereabouts. I believe as well that Fenix will be offering their entire A320 family in one package with a further discount also. As I mentioned during the video, the only significant complaint that I could level at the add-on would be its FPS impact on the sim. As you could no doubt see throughout the video, I was struggling at times in terms of the FPS, and that's really the first time I've encountered such an issue on my new PC. That being said, I was running the sim and recording in 4K, as well as using some fairly high fidelity sceneries, full AI traffic there as well, all of which will obviously have an impact, and personally I've never had too many issues running the Fenix Simulations A320 at 1080p. At the end of the day though, top tier flight simulation add-ons have always taxed PC hardware, and the Fenix Airbus family is certainly no exception. Otherwise though, the Fenix A319, the 321 is right up there as one of the best add-ons available for MSFS. And as I mentioned during my review of the Fenix Airbus A320, this is the closest add-on that I've had personal experience with in terms of recreating the feel, if not the performance, of flying an Airbus aircraft. If you want an add-on that performs as closely as possible to the real-world numbers, then I gather there are better options out there. But if you want to be immersed in what it's actually like to fly an Airbus, in terms of the looks, the sound, and again the feel, then personally I think that the Fenix Airbus family is right up there. My hat goes off to Fenix Simulations once again. As a dev, they really are a breath of fresh air, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what they bring us in the future. Once more, as a personal favour, if you do have any ideas how I might go about fixing the issue with my mouse pointer, please do let me know down in the comment section below. Otherwise, once again, I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider giving it a like. If you want to see more content from the channel, then please do consider subscribing as well. And if you like the content, you want to help support it further, again, you can do so by becoming a channel member or patron. Links to both of those will be down in the video description below. As always, a very big thank you to my channel members and patrons for all of your support. To all of you, I hope you are having a great day wherever you are. Take really good care, and I will see you all again soon.